Picture yourself tucked into a straw-strewn corner of a medieval healer's hut. Circa 1200 CE, the air thick with the scent of crushed herbs, wax, and the faint whiff of a midwife's damp cloak. The fire crackles low, and a woman whispers nervously about a brew to ease her burden, hoping the village priest doesn't catch wind. In medieval Europe, from muddy English hamlets to bustling Italian towns, abortion was a hushed, complex affair, woven into the fabric of women's lives through secretive remedies, whispered recipes, and a hefty dose of better not tell the neighbors. Drawing from texts like Trotula's medical writings and Hildegard of Bingen's Herbals, alongside folklore like the Distaff Gospels, these practices were both practical and perilous, blending herb-laced teas with prayers for discretion. We're not here to stir up medieval gossip, leave that to the market square, but to chuckle gently at their covert antics wrapped in the hum of a quiet healer's night. So fluff your imaginary blanket, ignore the distant bleat of a goat, and let the rustle of herbs, the flicker of a candle, and their cautious whispers lull you into a cozy, amused snooze. We're diving into 10 facets of how abortion was done in medieval times, each a peek into the herb-scented, stigma-soaked world of women and healers. From smoky huts to monastery gardens, we'll wander through their methods and motives, savoring the scent of sage, the clink of mortar and pestle, and the sheer audacity of brewing a remedy under the church's nose. These practices were a mix of survival, secrecy, and hope this potion works. Grab a mental mug of barley ale, settle in, and let's giggle our way through the hidden history of medieval abortion, each one a sleepy, snarky gem. Imagine huddling in an English healer's hut, 1250 CE, the air heavy with the scent of mugwort, sage, and the faint whiff of a midwife's singed sleeve. You're stirring a pot of bitter herbs, hoping the brew helps a woman regulate her courses without anyone noticing. The air's buzzing with the clink of a pestle, the rustle of dried leaves, and the murmur of not too strong. Trotula's medical texts list herbs like pennyroyal for ending pregnancies. Let's slip into this pungent secrecy, letting the flicker of a fire, the whiff of herbs, and their potion-making fuss make you chuckle as you drift toward sleep. Herbal brews per medieval medical writings were the go-to method, with plants like rue or savin steeped in teas to induce miscarriage. A bad mix could mean sickness, the air thick with the drone of stirring and the smell of bitter greens. You'd probably mutter, "Hope this brew's just right." Brewing was a nightly ritual, the air tense with the rustle of sacks and the hope of discretion. Life around this was furtive. Huts hummed with herb talk, the air heavy with the clink of mortar and the scent of mugwort. Midwives grinding leaves whispered about doses, their voices low, the air warm with the bubble of pots and the effort of staying secret. Neighbors sharing bread murmured about that strange brew, the air thick with the smell of stew and the whisper of "don't ask." The village tolerated this secrecy, snickering over ale about a healer's odd tea, the air thick with fumes and the kind of laughter you get when remedies are a whisper. Brews were a risk, and as the hut fades, let's shift to healer consultations where advice got hushed. Picture yourself in a French village, 1300 CE, the air heavy with the scent of wax, straw, and the faint whiff of a healer's herbal pouch. A woman slips in after dark, seeking advice on ending a pregnancy, hoping the church doesn't hear. The air's buzzing with the rustle of cloaks, the clink of a coin, and the murmur of "keep it quiet." The Distaff Gospels hints at midwives offering discreet counsel. Let's saunter into this shadowy chat, letting the flicker of a candle, the whiff of herbs, and their cautious advice make you snicker as you sink toward slumber. Consultations, per folklore, were held in secret, with healers advising on herbs or rituals to bring on the flux. A loud word could mean trouble, the air thick with the drone of whispers and the smell of wax. You'd probably mutter, "Hope no one's eavesdropping." Meetings were a ritual, the air tense with the rustle of straw and the hope of privacy. Life around this was secretive. Villages hummed with healer talk, the air heavy with the clink of coins and the scent of herbs. Women seeking advice whispered about needs, their voices low, the air warm with the flicker of candles and the effort of staying discreet. Neighbors, sharing ale, murmured about that late visitor, the air thick with the smell of bread and the whisper of "don't tell." The village tolerated the secrecy, snickering over stew about a healer's night guest, the air thick with fumes and the kind of laughter you get when advice is a whisper. Consultations were a gamble, and as the hut fades, let's shift to church tensions, where faith got tricky. Imagine kneeling in a German chapel, 1350 CE, the air heavy with the scent of incense, stone, and the faint whiff of a priest's damp robe. You're praying for forgiveness after a healer's visit, hoping the church doesn't suspect your herbal cure. The air's buzzing with the clink of rosaries, the rustle of cloaks, and the murmur of "don't confess that." Church records condemn abortion as sinful, but folklore shows women navigating the stigma. Let's dive into this tense piety, letting the flicker of a candle, the whiff of wax, and their church-dodging fuss make you chuckle as you drift toward sleep. The church, per medieval sermons, viewed abortion as a grave sin, urging confession, but women sought remedies quietly. A slip to the priest could mean penance, the air thick with the drone of prayers and the smell of incense. You'd probably mutter, "Hope Father doesn't ask." Praying was a ritual, the air tense with the rustle of beads and the hope of secrecy. Life around this was fraught. Chapels hummed with sin talk, the air heavy with the clink of censers and the scent of wax. Women, praying nervously, whispered about guilt, their voices low, the air warm with the chant of hymns and the effort of avoiding scrutiny. Neighbors, sharing bread, murmured about that guilty look, the air thick with the smell of ale and the whisper of "don't confess." The village tolerated the tension, snickering over stew about a priest's nosy sermon, the air thick with fumes and the kind of laughter you get when faith is a dodge. Church was a hurdle, and as the chapel fades, let's shift to physical methods where efforts got risky. Picture yourself in an Italian village, 1280 CE, the air heavy with the scent of straw, sweat, and the faint whiff of a midwife's liniment. A healer's advising a woman to bind her belly tightly, hoping to loosen the burden without harm. The air's buzzing with the rustle of cloth, the clink of a bowl, and the murmur of "not too tight." Trotula mentions physical methods like binding or massage for abortion. Let's wander into this risky effort, letting the flicker of a lamp, the whiff of straw, and their cautious binding make you chuckle as you sink toward slumber. Physical methods, per medical texts, included tight binding or abdominal massage to induce miscarriage, often dangerously. A wrong move could mean pain, the air thick with the drone of groans and the smell of liniment. You'd probably mutter, "Hope this doesn't hurt." Binding was a ritual, the air tense with the rustle of cloth and the hope of safety. Life around this was perilous. Huts hummed with method talk, the air heavy with the clink of tools and the scent of straw. Midwives tying cloths whispered about risks, their voices low, the air warm with the rustle of bandages and the effort of being gentle. Neighbors sharing ale murmured about that tight wrap, the air thick with the smell of bread and the whisper of be careful. The village tolerated the danger, snickering over stew about a healer's bad bind, the air thick with fumes and the kind of laughter you get when remedies are a risk. Methods were a gamble, and as the hut fades, let's shift to magical charms where superstition got involved. Imagine huddling in an English healer's hut, 1320 CE, the air heavy with the scent of herbs, wax, and the faint whiff of a charm's burnt parchment. A woman clutches an amulet, hoping its spell ends her pregnancy quietly. The air's buzzing with the rustle of charms, the clink of stones, and the murmur of work, please. The Distaff Gospels mentions charms for women's troubles. Let's slip into this mystical hush, letting the flicker of a candle, the whiff of herbs, and their spell-casting fuss make you chuckle as you drift toward sleep. Charms, per folklore like inscribed stones or chants, were believed to aid abortion, often paired with herbs. A weak spell could fail, the air thick with the drone of chants and the smell of wax. You'd probably mutter, "Hope this charm's strong enough." Casting was a ritual, the air tense with the rustle of parchment and the hope of success. Life around this was spooky. Huts hummed with charm talk, the air heavy with the clink of amulets and the scent of herbs. Healers chanting spells whispered about magic, their voices low, the air warm with the flicker of candles and the effort of invoking power. Neighbors sharing bread murmured about that odd chant, the air thick with the smell of ale and the whisper of don't tell. The village tolerated the magic, snickering over stew about a healer's bad spell, the air thick with fumes and the kind of laughter you get when remedies are a charm. Spells were a hope, and as the hut fades, let's shift to secrecy networks, where women got crafty. Picture yourself whispering in a French market, 1360 CE, the air heavy with the scent of bread, dust, and the faint whiff of a woman's herbal pouch. You're sharing a healer's name with a friend, hoping no one overhears your abortion tip. The air's buzzing with the rustle of cloaks, the clink of coins, and the murmur of don't let on. Folklore like the Distaff Gospels shows women exchanging remedy advice discreetly. Let's dive into this covert network, letting the flicker of a lamp, the whiff of herbs, and their whispered tips make you chuckle as you sink toward slumber. Networks, per medieval tales, connected women to healers through hushed tips about herbs or midwives. A loud whisper could mean gossip, the air thick with the drone of secrets and the smell of dust. You'd probably mutter, "Hope no one heard that." Sharing was a ritual, the air tense with the rustle of cloaks and the hope of discretion. Life around this was sneaky. Markets hummed with tip talk, the air heavy with the clink of baskets and the scent of bread. Women passing names whispered about healers, their voices low, the air warm with the rustle of cloth and the effort of staying secret. Neighbors sharing ale murmured about that odd chat, the air thick with the smell of stew and the whisper of keep it quiet. The village tolerated the secrecy, snickering over bread about a woman's sneaky talk, the air thick with fumes and the kind of laughter you get when tips are a whisper. Networks were a lifeline, and as the market fades, let's shift to monastery herbs, where monks got involved. Imagine creeping near a German monastery, 1290 CE, the air heavy with the scent of lavender, earth, and the faint whiff of a monk's damp habit. You're snagging herbs from the garden, hoping they work for a discreet remedy. The air's buzzing with the rustle of leaves, the clink of a trowel, and the murmur of "don't get caught." Hildegard's Physica lists herbs like tansy used by women. Let's wander into this sneaky harvest, letting the flicker of a torch, the whiff of herbs, and their garden-raiding fuss make you chuckle as you drift toward sleep. Monastery herbs, per medical text, were prized for remedies, with women or healers borrowing plants for abortion. A caught thief could face penance, the air thick with the drone of whispers and the smell of lavender. You'd probably mutter, "Hope no monk sees me." Harvesting was a ritual, the air tense with the rustle of cloaks and the hope of a quick grab. Life around this was daring. Gardens hummed with herb talk, the air heavy with the clink of tools and the scent of earth. Women, picking plants, whispered about monks, their voices low, the air warm with the rustle of leaves and the effort of staying unseen. Villagers, sharing bread, murmured about that garden raid, the air thick with the smell of ale and the whisper of "don't get caught." The village tolerated the theft, snickering over stew about a woman's bad pick, the air thick with fumes and the kind of laughter you get when remedies are a steal. Herbs were a prize, and as the garden fades, let's shift to ritual baths where cleansing got symbolic. Picture yourself soaking in a wooden tub in an English hut, 1340 CE, the air heavy with the scent of herbs, water, and the faint whiff of a healer's soapy hands. You're bathing with rue-infused water, hoping it aids a miscarriage discreetly. The air's buzzing with the splash of water, the rustle of cloth, and the murmur of "cleanse it all." Trotula mentions herbal baths for women's health. Let's slip into this steamy ritual, letting the flicker of a lamp, the whiff of rue, and their bathing fuss make you chuckle as you sink toward slumber. Baths, per medical texts, used herbs like pennyroyal to cleanse the womb, a subtle abortion method. A cold bath could fail, the air thick with the drone of splashes and the smell of herbs. You'd probably mutter, "Hope this bath works." Bathing was a ritual, the air tense with the rustle of towels and the hope of relief. Life around this was private. Huts hummed with bath talk, the air heavy with the clink of buckets and the scent of water. Healers preparing tubs whispered about remedies, their voices low, the air warm with the steam of baths and the effort of aiding women. Neighbors, sharing ale, murmured about that odd bath, the air thick with the smell of bread and the whisper of "don't ask." The village tolerated the secrecy, snickering over stew about a healer's weird soak, the air thick with fumes and the kind of laughter you get when remedies are a splash. Baths were a hope, and as the tub fades, let's shift to social stigma, where gossip got heavy. Imagine walking through an Italian village, 1370 CE, the air heavy with the scent of bread, dust, and the faint whiff of a neighbor's nosy gossip. You're dodging stares after visiting a healer, hoping no one guesses your abortion attempt. The air's buzzing with the rustle of cloaks, the clink of market baskets, and the murmur of "what's she up to?" Folklore shows women facing judgment for such acts. Let's dive into this wary shuffle, letting the flicker of a torch, the whiff of dust, and their gossip-dodging fuss make you chuckle as you drift toward sleep. Stigma, per medieval tales, made abortion a whispered secret, with women fearing village scorn or church punishment. A loose tongue could mean exile, the air thick with the drone of gossip and the smell of bread. You'd probably mutter, "Hope no one talks." Avoiding stares was a ritual, the air tense with the rustle of cloaks and the hope of privacy. Life around this was tense. Villages hummed with whispered talk, the air heavy with the clink of tools and the scent of dust. Women, dodging eyes, grumbled about neighbors, their voices low, the air warm with the rustle of skirts and the effort of staying discreet. Villagers, sharing ale, murmured about that odd woman, the air thick with the smell of stew and the whisper of "don't spread it." The village tolerated the secrecy, snickering over bread about a woman's sneaky walk, the air thick with fumes and the kind of laughter you get when gossip is a risk. Stigma was a burden, and as the village fades, let's shift to recovery care, where healing got gentle. Picture yourself resting in a French hut, 1310 CE, the air heavy with the scent of chamomile straw and the faint whiff of a healer's herbal salve. You're sipping a soothing tea, hoping to recover quietly after an abortion attempt. The air's buzzing with the clink of cups, the rustle of blankets, and the murmur of "rest easy." Trotula advises rest and herbs for post-remedy care. Let's wander into this gentle recovery, letting the flicker of a lamp, the whiff of chamomile, and their caring fuss make you chuckle as you sink toward slumber. Recovery, per medical texts, involved rest, teas, and salves to heal after herbal or physical methods. A bad recovery could mean illness, the air thick with the drone of sips and the smell of herbs. You'd probably mutter, "Hope this tea helps." Resting was a ritual, the air tense with the rustle of straw and the hope of health. Life around this was tender. Huts hummed with care talk, the air heavy with the clink of bowls and the scent of chamomile. Healers brewing teas whispered about rest, their voices low, the air warm with the rustle of blankets and the effort of aiding recovery. Neighbors, sharing bread, murmured about that quiet hut, the air thick with the smell of ale and the whisper of "don't disturb." The village tolerated the care, snickering over stew about a healer's fussy tea, the air thick with fumes and the kind of laughter you get when recovery is a sip. Care was a comfort, and as the hut fades, let's wrap up with a final reflection, tying these practices together with a smirk. When you look closely at the secretive, hushed world of medieval abortion and hold it up against the present day, the continuities and contrasts are startling, almost like watching shadows from an old candle flicker across the bright fluorescence of a modern clinic. In the Middle Ages, women whispered about remedies with coded phrases like regulating the courses or bringing on the flux, careful never to draw the attention of priests or gossipy neighbors. Today, in many parts of the world, those same dynamics linger under different names. People speak of women's health or reproductive care in tones sometimes hushed, sometimes defiant, depending on the laws and culture around them. The continuity is not in the plants themselves, for few would reach for pennyroyal or mugwort now, but in the emotional architecture, the fear of being overheard, the reliance on trusted networks, and the ever-present awareness that society may judge harshly what is lived privately. Back then, the risk was poisoning or infection. Now, in many societies, it is legal prosecution or social stigma. Yet both eras share the burden of secrecy, which shapes the experience as much as the physical methods themselves. In medieval villages, knowledge was scattered across midwives, healers, herbals, and folklore, never centralized, always a patchwork of risky advice. Today, information floods digital spaces in overwhelming abundance, websites, forums, medical hotlines, even apps, but the problem of trust remains the same. A woman in 1300 CE might listen carefully to the whispered advice of an older neighbor who swore by tansy tea. A woman in 2025 might scroll through anonymous posts, weighing which advice is genuine, safe, or even legal in her region. In both cases, there is the same anxiety of sifting through knowledge, uncertain which voice to trust, and the same reliance on informal networks to fill the gaps left by official institutions. Where monasteries once hoarded herbs and manuscripts, modern governments regulate access to medications and medical procedures. Both serve as gatekeepers, shaping what is accessible and what is withheld, though the tools of control have shifted from cloistered gardens and parchment to pharmacies, prescriptions, and healthcare policy. The church in the medieval world loomed as the ultimate arbiter of morality, branding abortion as sin and demanding confession and penance. Today, in many places, it is not the priest, but the politician, the judge, or the online commentator who carries the voice of condemnation. The nature of punishment has changed. Rarely is it now public penance in a chapel, but reputational damage, political polarization, and even legal consequences echo the same pressures. A woman in 1350 Germany might whisper her guilt beneath vaulted stone ceilings, clutching rosary beads, fearful of eternal damnation. A woman in the 21st century might lie awake at night, scrolling news about restrictive laws, wondering if her choices will leave her branded in courtrooms, workplaces, or family conversations. The vocabulary of sin has shifted into the language of legality and public morality, but the weight of outside judgment still bends over private bodies with unnerving persistence. Physical methods, too, show eerie parallels across centuries. Medieval women tied tight bindings around their bellies, took scalding baths, or endured dangerous abdominal massages in desperate attempts to bring on miscarriage. Today, where safe procedures are restricted, some still turn to unsafe physical methods using unregulated pills, harmful home remedies, or unqualified practitioners. The specific risks differ: pennyroyal poisoning then, septic complications now, but the underlying reality is the same. When official access is blocked, unsafe practices flourish. History shows that secrecy pushes people into harm's way, whether it is a smoky hut in 1280 or a hidden apartment in a modern city. Where care is driven underground, danger grows. The magical charms of medieval women parchments inscribed with Latin words, stones carved with symbols, whispered chants by candlelight, may feel alien at first, yet their modern cousins exist. They appear in the form of wellness influencers selling natural cleanses, pseudo-scientific remedies marketed online, or political rhetoric promising moral purity. Both the medieval charm and the modern pseudo-scientific cure offer hope dressed in ritual, appealing not to proven efficacy but to faith, desperation, and the human need to act, to do something rather than nothing. In both ages, the line between remedy and placebo blurs, and the emotional relief can sometimes matter as much as the physical result. The persistence of magical thinking across centuries underscores how vulnerable moments leave people reaching for certainty, whether it is a saint's amulet or a detox tea. Secrecy networks in the medieval marketplace, women whispering healer names under their breath, passing along tips like contraband, have their direct counterparts in modern digital communities. Today, instead of alleyway whispers, there are encrypted messaging apps, private social media groups, and shared links to resources. Where once women muttered in French markets about that night visitor to the healer's hut, today they swap discreet recommendations in private chats, using code words and emojis to evade surveillance. The technology has changed, but the sociology has not. People construct hidden pathways of care when the official ones fail them. The medieval harsh of "don't let on" has become the modern "don't screenshot this," yet both signal the same delicate dance of discretion and solidarity. Monastery gardens in medieval Germany, filled with tansy, rue, and lavender, guarded by monks and nuns, evoke striking parallels with today's pharmacies, research labs, and medical institutions. Just as villagers might sneak herbs from holy grounds, today people search for loopholes to access medications, whether through cross-border trips, online orders, or underground networks. The medieval herb was potent but imprecise. The modern pill is reliable, but often locked behind prescriptions and legal restrictions. Both scenarios highlight how access to healthcare is not purely medical. It is political, social, and shaped by gatekeepers. Where the monks once scowled at women creeping into their gardens, today lawmakers debate access to reproductive medicine, wielding a similar authority over bodies that are not their own. Ritual baths of rue-infused water echo faintly in today's emphasis on wellness, self-care, and bodily cleansing. Medieval women sank into herbal baths hoping for relief, often blurring the line between health, ritual, and superstition. Modern parallels might be found in holistic clinics, wellness retreats, or even in the comforting routines of warm baths and herbal teas used to soothe body and mind. The symbolism endures: water as purification, herbs as agents of transformation, the act of bathing as reclaiming control over the body. Then, as now, the experience was partly practical, partly psychological, a ritual of agency, however limited. The social stigma that wrapped medieval abortion in whispers still clings to modern reproductive health in many places. In a 1370 Italian village, a woman dodged stares after visiting a healer, afraid of neighbors' judgment. In a 21st century community, someone might dodge questions from family or colleagues, afraid of gossip, discrimination, or ostracism. Then it was alehouse whispers. Now it may be online rumors or tabloid headlines. The medium changes, but the machinery of shame persists. Both eras remind us that stigma is often as damaging as the act itself, burdening individuals not just with physical risk, but with lasting psychological weight. Finally, medieval recovery care resting in straw with chamomile tea, a healer's hand on the shoulder, quiet songs to soothe finds its echo in modern recovery rooms, clinics, or the simple act of self-care after a difficult decision. Today, safe medical procedures allow rest without fear of infection, but the emotional need for comfort, privacy, and gentleness remains unchanged. Whether it is a healer brewing a soothing tea in 1310 CE, or a nurse offering water and reassurance in 2025, recovery is not only about the body, it is about restoring calm, dignity, and the sense of being held in care. When all these layers are placed side by side, the medieval hut and the modern clinic, the whispered code and the encrypted message, the herb garden and the pharmacy, the comparison reveals a story of both progress and persistence. Science has replaced superstition, medicine has reduced risk, and yet secrecy, stigma, and contested morality endure, What this tells us is not only about history but about human constancy. Across centuries, people will always find ways to seek agency over their bodies, even in the face of danger or disapproval. The medieval world reminds us that the present is not as modern as it seems. Our struggles echo theirs, only in brighter rooms with louder debates. And just as women once tucked remedies into their cloaks and prayers into their whispers, so too today people tuck hope into digital messages, private clinics, and the quiet conviction that their choices matter even when society resists. As the hum of the healer's hut fades, the clink of mortar, the rustle of herbs, the scent of ale and whispered secrets, let your mind flop into the quiet like a villager after a long night of brewing. We've wandered through how abortion was done in medieval times, from herbal potions to recovery teas, each a testament to their secretive, herb-scented world. Their nights were a whirlwind of brews, prayers, and hope no one's watching, yet they were also a place where women and healers carved out agency in a judgmental world. Picture yourself now tucked into a soft bed, the air still and the clamor of their huts far away, their cautious whispers a distant chuckle. These medieval folks, practical and sneaky, remind us that even in history's quietest corners people were gloriously, messily human. Let the details slip away, like a candle flickering out in a smoky hut. The pungent herbs, the wary glances, the taste of ale and stigma-soaked air, they fade into the background, leaving only the peace of this moment and a lingering smirk. You've journeyed through a world where remedies were a risk, its women's hushed brews and careful rests keeping its story alive. Now it's time to rest, to let go of the medieval antics and sink into calm. Close your eyes, if you haven't already, and let the gentle absurdity of history lull you into sleep, safe in the silliness of now.